Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining the webinar on time. We'll get started in about 1 minute, just to allow folks to migrate over to the broadcast. Thank you. Okay, awesome. We're going to get started while folks keep jumping on. Welcome to Uplifting California Student Parents. I'm David Kroom, Assistant Director for Post-Secondary at the Aspen Institute, where I'm lucky to lead an amazing initiative focused on post-secondary success for student parents. We call the Aspen Post-Secondary Success for Parents Initiative. Please feel free to use the chat. This is a webinar, but we really wanted this to be an open space. We decided to go the webinar structure just because it's easier to control video and the like, but feel free to say hello in the chat, say who you are, where you're from. I would love for folks to use the space to connect with one another. We also have multiple instances during this webinar where there'll be a chance for questions from the audience. So feel free to use the Q&A feature of the webinar or the chat if you want to have a question or have a comment or anything. So feel free to really use this chat in a really thoughtful and engaging way. I'm really excited to be here with you all today. I know that probably many of you don't know me because I'm not based in California, I'm based in DC, but have been working with several colleagues from the Tipping Point Community, Education Trust West, California Competes, the Michelson 20MM Foundation, Blue Shield of California Foundation, among others, to think about how best to create a space virtually and hopefully in person next year to really coalesce support among early childhood, human services, post-secondary leaders and the like around the state of California in support of students who are parents. This is an important key population, one that represents over 20% of the post-secondary student population in the state. And we really want to use this space to build awareness and create opportunities for collaboration and generating new solutions and supports of parents enrolled in post-secondary pathways across the state. We have because of COVID, we weren't able to host an in-person convening this year, but as will be mentioned throughout, we really hope to use a space as an opportunity to connect and to build awareness around this population, and then hopefully be able to invite you all to join us in person next year for a convening to really collaborate in person and develop those important relationships. We have a great agenda with you today, for us today. We have great speakers. We have an amazing presentation coming up from California Competes and a student parent panel upcoming as well. As I mentioned, and we'll keep mentioning throughout, if you have any comments, questions, please pop them in the chat. Please use the Q&A functionality. And with that, I want to throw it over to my colleague, Kara Dukakis from Tipping Point Community to provide a more formal welcome and to kick us off on our agenda today. Thank you, Kara.
Thanks so much. Ooh, sorry, one thing worked. Thanks so much, David. I am so incredibly excited to be here with all of you today, and just seeing your names and your greetings in the chat is so totally exciting to me. So again, I'm Kara Dukakis. I'm the Senior Program Officer for Early Childhood at Tipping Point Community. And for those of you who don't know, Tipping Point is a poverty fighting organization focused on the Bay Area and California. And we provide philanthropic support to direct service organizations and systems change initiatives in the areas of early childhood, housing, education, and employment. So my main job here is to introduce the incredible Dr. Sujin Jez, who I've been lucky enough to know now and work with over the past several years. But before I do, I want to claim another role, which is to show up here as someone who's focused primarily on the early childhood and human services angle along with colleagues who are more focused on the post-secondary one, and including student parents themselves, of course. I think when we're talking about student parents, they're equally important. It's equally important to talk about the post-secondary space and also early childhood, child development, child care, et cetera. So the reason why, as an early childhood funder, student parents are really front and center on our agenda is pretty simple to me. First, we all know that parents are really the key to their kids' success. That's full stop. But we also know more specifically that if parents are successful, and in this case, student parents on their post-secondary education journeys, we know that their children have a much better chance of being successful as well, whether it's in their education, in their health, in other areas of their lives, or all of the above. So to segue to introducing Sujin, Tipping Point started our investment in student parents by first funding the UC Davis Education Policy Lab and Dr. McCall Kurlander and her team, including Sherry Reed and others. We asked them to research the numbers and demographics and the academic outcomes of low-income student parents in California. And we found out, in short, that first, there are a lot of student parents in this state. We also found out that they're not getting nearly enough supports. At the same time, we found out that there's enormous reason to be hopeful. And so we took all of these learnings from the research and wanted to apply them to our policy work. So once we had the data and the research, Tipping Point and California Competes decided to work together, lucky for us. And California Competes used a lot of that data and research to create a policy agenda for student parents, which Sujin is going to share. And we feel extraordinarily lucky that we did, because California Competes was absolutely the right fit. And we feel super confident that everyone will see so much value and promise there is in what they created. So with that, it's my total pleasure to pass this on to Sujin Jez, ED of California Competes.
Thank you for that great intro. So I'm going to share screen. I have some PowerPoint slides. All right, here we go. Okay. Great. Well, thank you for having me here today. As Cara mentioned, I'll be discussing California's current landscape of student parents in higher ed and the strategies that could help more of them complete their education and secure a better future. This was a part of our recently launched policy agenda focused on student parents and the related blog series that pulls together a lot of research, including the great Real Health study. And I see on the attendee list here today, a lot of good work from everyone in this room to package solutions so that we can move forward more effectively in California to support student parents at the policy level. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this right now, and I look forward to jumping into the conversation via chat afterwards. All right, if I should be sharing slides right now, if you guys do not see them, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to move forward and assume you can. So before I jump into my talk, let me talk briefly about who California Competes is. So California Competes is a higher education policy research and advocacy org, and we sit at the intersection of higher education, equity, and the economy. We aim to solve our state's thorniest social and economic problems by conducting rigorous higher education and workforce policy research. And we view higher ed as both a vaccine and an antidote against economic stagnation and social stratification for individual Californians, for our communities and for the state's economy. And we believe that long-term economic growth for California will be accomplished through shared prosperity. And so I wanted to share that because we're, unlike many of you on this call or in this convening, are not an org solely focused on student parents. We're an org focused on how can higher education advance our state's needs and help our communities thrive. And in conversations with Cara over the last few years, we really felt that serving student parents was essential to meet this need. So how did we in some ways get here? So in some early reports that California Competes has done, the most recent of which is called Mind the Gap, we found that California faces a shortage of college educated professionals. We found that we would need over 2 million additional certificates and degrees beyond what we're on track to produce. And parenting students will play a critical role in growing higher education enrollment and closing this credential gap. In another study, we found that there are currently 6.8 million Californians ages 25 to 54 who have a high school diploma but no college degree. And more than half, about 57% of these, what we call potential graduates, have dependent children. This is California's untapped opportunity. Colleges have been too geared towards students in the traditional linear school to work pipeline. And our work seeks to shift systems and institutions towards serving the large and diverse populations of current and prospective adult learners who may weave between learning, work, and other life obligations. This means gearing pathways and supports for the unique needs of student parents. So why do this? There are more reasons than I could list. I'll just focus on two. First, serving student parents is the right thing to do and will help us close equity gaps for populations that have been historically underserved in higher education, as a disproportionate number of student parents are students of color. So as you see on this slide, among students of color, 1 in 3 Black students, 1 in 3 Native American students, and 1 in 5 Latinx students have children. A second reason, which Cara talked about in the intro, is addressing student parents, addressing their needs and carving out a pathway to and through higher education would create ripple effects for education and the economy. Parental education, particularly mother's educational level, has been linked to the academic and economic success of their children, and increasing the educational attainment of parents produces cost savings in terms of reduced spending on public benefits and increased tax revenues. To understand how to ease the pathway to educational success for student parents, we need to understand who they are and the obstacles that they face. And pulling from the good research that was conducted by Wheelhouse at UC Davis and the Institute for Women's Policy Research, we've pulled and highlighted some of their key findings. They've found that student parents are more likely to identify as female, be from underrepresented racial and ethnic groups. They're more likely to attend community college. And as a review of 2018 financial aid applications found that 72% of student parents intended to enroll in a California community college. So reforms to the community college are essential to serve this population. They're also 2 times more likely to leave college without a degree after 6 years compared to non-parenting students. Student parents also face greater barriers than students without children. Specifically in the Wheelhouse study, student parents were more likely to report being food insecure, housing insecure, or homeless within the last year than students without children. In the same study, they found that 30% of student parents reported experiencing symptoms of moderate to severe depression. As such, it's imperative that California addresses the needs of student parents. We've grouped the specific reforms needed into 4 main strategies: increase the availability of affordable and quality dependent care, increase higher education affordability for student parents, advance student parent-friendly institutional design, collect and share data on student parents. I'll go through them in more detail, and you can find even more detail than I'll go through right now in our policy agenda and blog series, and including references to the research to support these recommendations. So increasing access to high quality, affordable childcare. So students' parents who use campus childcare had a 21% increase in degree attainment over student parents who did not. So we've identified increasing access to high quality, affordable childcare by reforming the state's subsidized childcare system, expanding campus-based childcare options, growing aftercare options for school-age children, and providing childcare tuition relief. We can address the growing childcare provider shortage by by increasing provider wages and parents' ability to afford childcare, and also increasing pathways to becoming an early care provider. Our second main strategy is increasing higher education affordability for student parents. We see the three main buckets under this: actively supporting student parents and prospective student parents and maximizing receipt of available financial support, AKA get the financial aid they're already eligible for. Also reforming state financial aid to meet the needs of student parents. Obviously, the current sort of student budgets don't always include childcare, and it's a real challenge for student parents to access aid to include childcare. And then improving net price calculators to promote clarity in the true cost of college for student parents. So students don't have to go through the entire FAFSA application to get a good sense of the cost of college. Third, advancing student parent friendly institutional design. So enable more flexible pathways that are accessible, cost effective, portable, and tailored to the needs of student parents. Also fostering child-friendly campuses and reducing stigma faced by student parents by offering family-friendly spaces, services, and supports. I think, we've all heard stories or have been ourselves in situations where we're told that children are not allowed in this space, and it makes it therefore inaccessible to student parents. And in the third box, increase the accessibility and availability of online courses and programs of family-friendly structures. In the Wheelhouse, the UC Davis Wheelhouse study, they found that student parents are more likely to take online courses. Likely this is cross-cutting with a lot of the other findings around availability of childcare and the need for flexible course structures and timing. But making sure that our online courses are high quality and deliver equitable outcomes will be really, really critical to serving student parents. And collect and share data on student parents. I wouldn't be, leading a research organization if I didn't have something around data, of course. But this is really critical for those that have done or are trying to do research on student parents are well aware that we do not collect good data on student parents in California. And that obviously can make it really hard to have evidence-based recommendations for how to best support student parents. So this is one really critical component. We've identified three main pieces. First, require post-secondary institutions to identify, collect, and report data on student parents applying and enrolling at their colleges. Include data and student parents and their educational trajectories in California's about to be launched Cradle to Career data system. But that data system can only have that data if institutions are collecting it. And last but not least, direct relevant government offices to regularly analyze student parents' progress into and through higher education. We can get the data, we can report it, but we really need to have good and regular analysis of what's going on. What is the condition of education for student parents? So that I just went through what is a very, very, I feel like, detailed blog series on the needs of student parents, and I'm happy to take any questions. And I encourage everyone to go to the blog series, which can be found on our website or via this tiny URL, and read both the policy agenda, which is very short and pithy for our policymakers, and the blog series which has a lot more detail on the specific reforms. And again, I want to thank all of the many people, including many that are on at this convening, who reviewed, provided feedback, and produced the research that we were able to pull together to put this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Sujan. And as she mentioned, if you have any questions for her, feel free to add them to chat or Q&A. I'll start off with a question that I was thinking about upon listening to your presentation. So there's a lot of really great content within the blog series. I had a chance to review it and give some feedback on it. From your vantage point, and you can talk about post-secondary, but it could be other areas too, maybe. What are, you mentioned a lot of specific policy opportunities that exist. Are there any over the next year into 2022 that you see as some potential kind of low-hanging fruit that could be addressed fairly quickly via regulatory, legislative, or executive systems within the state?
That is a great question. I'm like, my brain right now is I'm trying to like process this into a coherent response. Yes, I think there's a lot of opportunities. Perhaps the silver lining of being in California right now is that our state had a huge surplus, and it looks like our state again will have another huge surplus, which also means that the state will need to figure out how to spend this money. So I think we could be strategic around helping California, frankly, best use this surplus to serve Californians, particularly those hardest hit, like student parents, and like women of color in the economy and the labor market. In particular, I think reforms to our financial aid program will be really critical. We have made great strides. In fact, the California Student Aid Commission today announced that 100,000 new students access the Cal Grant because we got rid of the age requirement and the time out of high school requirement, which definitely supports student parents who are older and would not have had access to financial aid in the past. So now it is, again, like I had mentioned, is getting those student parents to get the financial aid that they're eligible for, I think is one key one. The crisis around childcare is one that the state has been focused on, and I anticipate we'll see good action. A lot of it will just be, we need to subsidize childcare. I think there's not going to be I think this is a market failure. No other country has tackled this in a way that works, that isn't subsidizing childcare. So I think that just needs to happen. And I think California needs to make that investment, particularly if the federal government is going to be slower around the soft infrastructure investments. California can do it on its own. I also think around housing, in California, housing and housing affordability and homelessness are real issues. I think we could make great strides around that also, quickly around, financial aid, providing faster access to housing. And the state has also made big investments in housing. The other thing that I saw in last year's budget that I hadn't seen as much is new programs in California have had more of an equity focus. So in investments around higher education in the state, the funds would be allocated based on a segment share of low-income students, or funding is earmarked for student parents. So that has not been something that has been a priority in the past, and I hope will continue to be for our governor and the legislature. I could go on and on, but I feel like there's lots of opportunities, because in California we have a lot of money right now. So I feel like
that's a really great sampling of just potential things on the horizon. I see there's a interesting kind of conversation going on in the chat around Title IX and supports for pregnant and parenting, but as rightfully mentioned by many, data, and this mentioned by you earlier, data is such a specific issue here, and the dearth of data that exists in the space. I think about a month ago, you were appointed to the Cradle to Career Data System Governing Board. So really interested in your perspective around, and I know you've already mentioned too that there's some restrictions in terms of that because it has to be data that colleges are collecting. So from your, now kind of that new pulpit to, I guess, being on this governing board, is there any specific, like, what's part of your, I guess, edict going to be on that board? I know it's probably still fairly new, but in terms of kind of data collection, what are some of the data that you're interested in seeing colleges start to collect around pregnant and parenting students? And what are some of the other key elements you think would be really helpful for us to understand how student parents are being impacted or able to complete their post-secondary credentials?
Yeah, so California, we're one of just a few states that does not have a statewide longitudinal data system. But when our cradle-to-career data system does launch, we will be at the front of the pack. So we are looking to bring together our K-12 data, our public higher ed data from the community colleges, the CSU and the UC, and workforce data to understand students' earnings after they complete or when they leave if they don't complete. And the vision for the cradle-to-career data system is to be able to also include early care data, to include social services data, to include data from private post-secondary institutions, both nonprofit and for-profit. And the data system will have two, I feel like I've envisioned two sort of like, I think of it as two components. There's going to be an analytical piece for researchers. Some of it will be student level, confidential student level data that, researchers with, due process can access. There'll be query tools where you could do, a pretty technical analysis with the publicly available data on the website. And then there will also be, reports that the Cradle to Career Data System Office will put out that will analyze the data around key metrics. But there will also be a really exciting part that's operational for practitioners. So teachers, counselors, benefits administrators will be able to access data to understand how to better serve students. I think this in the long run could really serve student parents, particularly if we could streamline eligibility requirements and make eligibility for benefits automatic. And so this is a part of, if you go into the in-depth policy agenda on our website, that there are so many students who are eligible for different benefits, but are inaccurately denied access or don't know. So if we could get students, if we have a push to apply for financial aid to complete the FAFSA, and that provides information around other benefits, whether it's nutritional assistance or low-cost internet, that we could tell a student, Sujan, not only are you getting the Cal Grant, you've also eligible automatically for X, Y, Z, and just to make it as simple as possible for students. This Cradle to Career data system, we're looking to build it so it will have that ability. I'm very excited about that. That said, the data system does not collect any new data. It's only data that's already being collected by these entities, these agencies. So it will be really critical that higher ed collects data on student parents.
Awesome. There's a question in the Q&A. I wasn't sure if the student parent policy agenda got to this at all, but did you have a sense of you mentioned, I know childcare was an element of it, but did you have a sense of the preferences for student parents for on-campus childcare versus off-campus childcare? Was there any, did you have any focus groups or elements where you did talk to parents about childcare access and availability?
We did not.
Okay.
But what was clear from the existing research is that there needs to be a variety of options. And that is not only because of the age of children, obviously of different care requirements, but also students' course taking is different. Some students are in traditional, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 to 2 p.m. courses, and some are evening and weekends. Some want their care close to their home versus the institution. I mean, you can imagine in the same way that, parents who are not students need a variety of childcare options. It's no different for student parents.
Awesome. And then last question that's in here. Did you touch on Title IX at all in the policy agenda or find any information relevant to that? And were there any recommendations that were made around opening access to Title IX to students?
Yes, and yes. I am thinking right now, there's definitely a blog or a part of a blog on it that has, and the blog has a lot more detail than the policy agenda. The policy agenda is kind of like a snippet, a bite-sized piece. I will chat it. I will find it after I finish this part here, and I will send it out directly. But there is a section on Title IX. We think that's a
Awesome.
critical part to serving student parents. Absolutely.
Great. Thank you, Sue Jen. She'll be here throughout. So if you have any questions, feel free to send her a message or you know, she'll be present. So feel free to say hello or talk to her in the chat. We want this again to be a really engaging space. So thank you again for your presentation.
Of course. And if anyone wants to reach me afterwards, if there's later thoughts or they'd like to have us come speak, we are happy to do so. My email is on that slide or go on their website. Great. I will stop
you.
share.
Thank you, Sue Jen. So after that really great presentation around just really setting up the policy space right now as it exists in California and recommendations for student parents, it's important for us in this work to, of course, always engage the voices of student parents. And so we're going to move forward to a student parent panel facilitated by my good friend, Chris Nellum, the Executive Director of Ed Trust West. You all know Chris and the great work that he's been doing advocating on behalf of California's students from P to 20, but his background and expertise is really around higher education. So throw it over to him to take the lead and share more about Ed Trust West's great work in this space and facilitate this amazing panel of women. So thank you, Chris.
David, and thanks, Sue Jen, for that great those great opening remarks. As David said, my name is Chris Nellum. I serve as the Executive Director of the Education Trust West here in California. I'm just really, really humbled to be in community with all of you today. As Sue Jen shared, you know, better supporting student parents is not only the right thing to do, but it's a racial equity imperative. I also, you know, our organization's committed to student parents for those reasons, but also personally, these issues are important to me. I'm a kid of a student parent who didn't finish college because I don't think my mom's college was prepared to support student parents. And I think had she finished, so much would have been different for her and for us. So just really grateful to be in community with you all today. I won't say a ton about Ed Trust West, except that we're a statewide research and advocacy organization. We're really committed to racial equity. We do our work through research and policy and advocacy. I'll drop into the chat in a second 2 resources that I hope are helpful to you. Over the last 23 or so months, we have been engaging with student parents, primarily women of color, in some of our work. It produced a report called Hear My Voice. Reports for us are really just the beginning of our advocacy, but you can see in this report, when I drop it in, our priorities, some of the findings, some of the voices and experiences that we heard from women of color across primarily the California State University system, the CSU system. We also, in that link, there's a bright spot about Fresno State with insights from Dr. Larissa Mercado Lopez about their efforts there at Fresno State to actually collect student parent data. So hope you'll check those out. I'm around. Please let me know if you want to chat further, but without taking up too much more time, because we really want to hear from our students, I will hand it over to them to introduce themselves. I don't yet see them on the spotlight. There's Lorena. Amber, is Amber here? And Amber, and then
Shush's camera, or she's having a bad connection, so I told her to just keep her camera off if she needed to.
And there's okay. Well, we're really excited to hear from each of you. Thank you so much for taking time for being with us today. Lorena, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Hi, I am Lorena, mother of a 3-year-old, and I am in my 2nd year of nursing school. Started at Los Angeles Valley College, and now I'm in Loma Linda. working as hard as I can.
And Sush.
Hi, my name is Shivani. I'm a student parent. My daughter is 7 years old. I am majoring in accounting, and I am about to finish with the community college that I'm attending, Valley College, and transfer to a university. It took me good 5 years to just finish community college courses. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And Amber, do you want to bring us home? And I think you also have our first question.
Perfect. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I am Amber Angel. I am a program coordinator at Los Angeles Valley College Family Resource Center. I also serve Los Angeles Valley College as an adjunct instructor in 21st century workforce skills and a parent advisor to Ascend at the Aspen Institute. I'm very connected to this because I was a student parent in the program, just like Lorena and Shush, and now I have been working here 8 years. And to all of the comments that Sujin, and the stats that she was sharing just reiterated the need for these parenting supports on college campuses. We are the only standalone family resource center in the state of California of 115 community colleges. And I personally know the impact that having supports like the FRC make all of the difference in the world and why they are important. The success rate of our student parents who use services and are a member is 10% higher than other student parents of the college who don't. So with that, I'm very happy to be here to talk with you all today. And I will just share, I graduated in 2019 with 2 daughters and a bachelor's degree in family studies because of the support I had at Valley College, where I graduated with an AA degree. And Christopher, I feel you too. Feel you in that if there was supports or if there was awareness, what like our parents could have accomplished, during that process. I'm the youngest of 8 and the first in my family to go to college. So for Lorena and for Shush, we talked earlier about this, and Lorena, I think you're going to have a different and kind of unique perspective too to answer this, but really, what impact has coronavirus had? Like, we have to address the fact that we are still in a pandemic on you and your family's overall well-being. Did it shift with what you needed from the FRC? And Lorena, you have the perspective of you were working as a student parent and at the FRC when this happened. So you got to know what you needed, but you got to hear from your fellow student parents what they were going through.
Do you want me to start? Yeah. The huge shift, I think, is that being a student parent comes with a big hat of anxiety. And then that was added on to the hat of a pandemic. For example, my son was sick last week. And not only do I have to deal with a cold, get sitters, make sure he's okay, schedule doctor's appointments, I have to get him COVID tested, get myself cleared through my campus to go back on campus. So it is this massive level of stress. And yet there's not really the support to acknowledge that. I miss the days where a cold was just a cold. It's already hard to get childcare, but then childcare, like, do I even want to touch your son? Does he have, COVID? It's a whole new level that is hard to manage.
Shush, how are you and your daughter and family managing through COVID? How has that impacted your schooling?
Oh, it really impacted my schooling at the beginning when we went to lockdown in March. I was previously diagnosed with depression, and my depression hit hard on spring 2020. And I just couldn't make any of my classes, and it was really hard. I had to drop all of my classes. I got my GPA 0 for the semester. I lost my student worker position. And I went through hell during that semester, but then I crowd myself and I enrolled in summer classes, 3 classes, passed with A, improved my GPA and got back my student worker position and everything. But it really, I'm telling you, the pandemic, the lockdown really impacted me.
Can I share one little thing too? Because I used to make phone calls through the Family Resource Center to parents. And sometimes you would get someone and I would just be on the phone with them crying for a half an hour over the stress. A mother of domestic violence who was locked in her room And these are things you can't even imagine. And the support that the FRC was to offer counseling, offer financial support, offer resources was invaluable to our people. I don't know if they would have made it without that extra hand of support. Like Shush said, it was over the top, and then put someone who's already in a crisis, it was beyond over the top.
And you're back in school, Shush, and you persevered, and you had that grit, and so happy to still be supporting you as a student and your daughter. And that was, I think, Chris, I'm going to pass it back to you for another question.
Sure. Thanks to each of you for sharing. I think our next question for all of you is, as working parents, what barriers have you faced in accessing state supports like CalWORKs and other supports that may require, applications, et cetera? Any reflections or improvements that you think folks need to know?
Shush, do you want me to go first, or do you want to go? I can. So one of the most challenges is the difficulty with the paperwork. For example, I was in the middle of finals. I'm a 4.0 student. I've never missed school, never missed a class, and yet there's paperwork due every month, often in the middle of exams. And then I do it right, and it's turned back to me wrong, or they missed something, or the worker sent me the wrong form in the first place. You have to have a PhD to do the paperwork, and you have to not have a job to have enough time to do the paperwork. And then you have to upload it in the right way they want it uploaded. So, I wish there was a way to have a season where you do your paperwork. It's before or after your semester of school. And if you get on probation, fine, you go on probation, have to do it more often. But to have to do monthly turn-ins in the middle of school when you're working, being a mom and doing school is too much. And like for childcare, for example, I have moved here to San Bernardino to finish this degree that I'm in right now. And I have been without childcare for 7 months. So I have taken out loans to pay for my childcare to the tune of $7,000 because I can't get my childcare covered, because I have had to turn in paperwork, I think 10 times, rejected for this, rejected for that, rejected for this. And it says I have a right to childcare, but I can't get it. And I had to change my son's childcare because he was assaulted by one of his teachers. And so I had to do it quickly. And yet it's been impossible to get the paperwork put through, even though I chose a licensed place. I did the forms. I started early. I did everything I'm being asked of, and I still can't get support. So that's not cool.
Amber or Sush, do you have reflections?
I was going to let Shush go first because I actually didn't access CalWORKs, but I do have a response to it in a different way.
Yeah, I can, sorry, my connection is really bad, but CalWORKs, it really helps when it comes to the welfare, food stamp, cash aid, and childcare. It's essential. It's 100%, and financial aid. That's all the income I have at all. Am I disconnected?
No, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't know how it is in other offices, in other areas, but the customer service is really, really bad. We can regularly get a bad attitude from workers. They fail to deliver information on timely manner. Like I said last time, they stopped my food stamp for 2 months, and it was in September and October, and they failed to notify me properly so that I could take action in advance. So it is definitely helping you out as a single parent, as a student parent, but it's also giving you a lot of hard time. It needs great improvement. And I totally agree with Lorena. Thank you.
Thank you, Shush. So this is all, it's interesting because what I wanted to say, it really kind of aligns perfectly before either one of you spoke. And like, how am I going to talk about this? Because I never had CalWorks. I never had CalWorks because of the like very strict requirements that were like placed for me to fit into to get CalWorks. And I was very low income. I was on WIC. I was getting food stamps. I was through getting department social services, but I wasn't a single technically, I think at the time when I first applied, and there was just all these barriers in even getting approved to access their services. But I do know there is a lot of support, like Shush said, with textbook support and financial aid and childcare. So the thing that is kind of the mission behind the Family Resource Center, and to what Kara was talking about earlier, that is so important that we need to be thinking about, is children and parents together. Like I know that, and not creating additional barriers. The Family Resource Center has a completely open door policy. If you are in one unit at Valley College and you have a child in the home that you care for, whether that be a younger sibling or a child that you treat as a child that's not maybe directly yours, we want to support you. We want to provide all the support for you. And what that looks like is not necessarily childcare, because we don't do childcare at the Family Resource Center, but we have, as Kara was mentioning, and as Sujin was mentioning, family-friendly spaces. So if Lorena needs to come in and study and she can't take her 2-year-old at the time to the library, and she's really struggling because she's taking a pharmaceutical class and she needs to tutor, where can she do that realistically? And so the Family Resource Center offers all those additional things beyond childcare, beyond financial support. Even though we do offer financial support, it's all those other little things that are just the low-hanging fruits. Like, come to campus with your kid and study, and we'll have interns that'll play with your children, so you can meet with our social worker, so you can meet with our therapist, so you can, and that was everything for me. And I got to meet other parents, which was a huge thing. And that's a huge lever of support when you meet other people that know what you're going through.
Yes, thank you each for sharing. It sounds like, there are, apologies for the train, there are many takeaways from what you all shared: better awareness and sharing of information with campus administrators so that they can be better prepared to support parenting students. Sounds like thinking about ways to make the programs that are intended to support student parents actually not be the barrier themselves. So streamlining how folks access, and then also just being really intentional about supporting both the parent and the young one, as Amber just spoke to. So just appreciate you each for sharing. I am not sure where we are on time, but I know we have another question that I think we all thought would be helpful for you all to speak to. What is one myth about parenting students that you want folks on this in this virtual room to know isn't true?
I've come to learn that student parents, and this is true in my current campus, and it was true in Los Angeles Valley College, have the highest grades of anyone in the class. And I think that there's a thought that these students don't do as well, where I would say, when I found out that they are the hardest working and some of the best achievers at school, despite the fact that they have way more responsibilities than the single 18-year-old. So yeah.
Thanks, Lorena. Shush, Amber, anything coming up for you all that we want to do some myth busting around?
Sure, I'll go, and then Shush, you can close out. I have 2 things that just came to mind. First of all, I just echo Lorena, and my thought initially was that student parents don't need to be empowered. Like, it's like, let's empower these parents. They're empowered. If you're spending time away from your family and you're leaving the home to come better your life for them, you're doing that for a reason, and you're doing it intentionally. So it's not about empowering us, it's about supporting us. And then I think a real true myth, and I actually caught myself in this myth, is that we all have the same, like that we're all the same, like that what's going to support me as a student parent with my 2 kids is going to be maybe the same for another student parent. And you have to be fluid, and you have to be willing to shift and change. And that is something that the director here, Marnie Roosevelt of the Family Resource Center, is really intentional about. She's like, okay, that didn't work. Let's try something new. Like, don't be afraid to take risks, and don't be afraid to invite your parents to the table to make sure that they're being allowed that individualism of asking of support.
Sush, anything from you?
Hi, sorry, my connection keeps going back and forth.
You're fine.
So,
Fine.
yeah, all the support that we receive from CalWorks and from Family Resource Center and financial aid, it makes a big difference. It's important, and I wouldn't honestly, I wouldn't even speak English right now if not all those things that all those supports that I've been receiving during these years that I live in the United States. So yeah, it's very important to empower, encourage students. Hello.
Hey. Oh, are you back?
Yeah, and acknowledgement is a big difference, makes a big difference too. So, thank you. Yes, that's it.
Thank you all. I think, I can't say it any better than you all said, acknowledging student parents and their strengths and their needs, realizing they actually don't need to be empowered. They just need a system that supports them, I think are all really, really important takeaways. And I think our last question before we hop in to some Q&A, which is filling in quickly, which is great, is Amber started to talk about this just a little bit earlier about low-hanging fruit, if you will. But what is one change that college administrators or student success or support staff can make to better support student parents? What is something that someone could do maybe today to better support student parents from your perspective?
I have an answer for that. I would say the one specific thing that I suffer from always every semester with each class is the due dates and assignment deadlines. I always submit it, a lot of time I submit it after the deadline, and they reduce your grade and everything 10%, but some professors, they go nuts, they just go crazy, they don't accept. If all the students are able to submit it on time, then you must be able to, and everything. So I would say just review the policies for different groups of students about deadlines. Sometimes I just submit my assignments, all past due assignments for September. I submit them all in November, but I do submit them and I get high grades and everything, So that's one thing that I can think of right now.
I wowould just add, because I got to experience the joy of the Family Resource Center and then leaving the nest to not the Family Resource Center. And and my school has been amazing in meeting with me and trying to launch a parent program. However, it's been a year and it hasn't launched. And I wish there was more understanding of how amazing what the Family Resource Center is and what that could do. Because like Amber said, I needed to study one night and I knew I could go there and have a room to study in. Right now, I spend $80 a week in childcare because I have to go to clinical at 6 a.m. Someone has to take my son to school. And then if I have to, I hire a babysitter just to play with my son while I'm here so I can study. And that's all out of pocket because I don't have family. So it's just me. And for people like me who come from other countries, I know immigrants who have no one, to have a place you can go that is safe for your child is invaluable, and that needs to be duplicated in more campuses.
I know I'm supposed to speak now, but I'm getting emotional. You made me emotional, Lorena, because it is so true. And I do know I know how much you've overcome and persevered being alone with David, and how amazing you guys both are as mothers and students. I'm just so impressed with both of you. I don't, Miguel is on this call, I believe, from the Michelson Foundation, and we were speaking about priority registration for students. When you're trying to take into account the reality of, scheduling your classes, your kids' childcare, your work schedule. I was working 3 jobs at one point while I was in community college with my kids. And so, but that, I know that's not a low hanging fruit. And so since that's not even a low hanging fruit, I want to even go bigger and just say that the thing I really think we talk about a lot here is the importance of aligning with equity, the importance of aligning with what's going on in California for basic needs. Student parents make up this giant population of students in California, and yet aren't designated as an equity group. And I think that would not only bring more funding and opportunity to the work, I think it would bring more awareness that being a parent and getting support is kind of a basic need.
So for folks paying attention, there were at least 3 things there. Getting clear about equity conversations and initiatives happening on your campus. And as Sujan said earlier, Amber just underscored, student parents should be very central to equity efforts across the state. Another is maybe thinking about, which could be possible, is using some of the pandemic dollars that are coming to campuses now to think about how to build out resources specifically for student parents. And then from SUSH, which I experienced as a faculty member this last semester or quarter, is thinking sort of supporting faculty members so that they can be more flexible as they think about assignments. On where I was teaching, I shared on a call earlier today, I gave 11 incompletes because students needed the extra time. It didn't cost me anything extra. The university had some issues, I think, on the administrative side, how to keep the incompletes to not change to a lighter grade before the students were ready. But those are things that faculty members with their, in their roles can push for and can do. So I love each of your recommendations there. So thank you so much for sharing. And I'm gonna move us, if it's okay, it looks like it is, to some of the questions that came through the Q&A, and this one's from Rachel Wick at the Blue Shield Foundation. And she's curious, what are some sources of strength and resilience that you all draw from? And I follow up, sort of a related question is, what helps you persevere and succeed in spite of the challenges, or I would say, in spite of the failures of our system to do the right thing? So sources of resilience, what makes you keep persevering?
Is this for us? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You're definitely driven when you know you have a mouth to feed that's not your own. I pray every day. I meditate every day. I can't miss either of those or my whole day is off. In optimism, I find that when I come with a poor me, I don't get the support, but I come with hope and expectation. And I've found that even though it's challenging and some days it's very frustrating, when you expect things to work, they tend to work. And like Amber said, there is support. It's hard to find. I think each school has someone who knows about resources, just finding who that person is. There's one amazing woman on my campus who has a lot of support, but I didn't know about it until I went to her in tears and said, my classmate just told me she can't order food for herself and that she went hungry to feed her child. And if I hadn't asked the question, I wouldn't have known the support, but finding people who can see you and don't judge you, because there's definitely a stigma sometimes where you feel like you did something wrong to be a student parent, because why didn't you do it earlier? And when you can find someone like Amber, like Marnie, like Shush, my fellow student parent, who sees you and says, you didn't do something wrong, you're doing so many things right now. I think without, and like the CalWorks Association on Los Angeles Valley College, where Ellie Rabini is in that team, when you go there and they see you and they are proud of you. And every time I got an A, the whole office would cheer for me. That kept me going when I knew these people were so proud of what I was doing and seeing my son thrive. So people that see you and support you, and then your beautiful children. When I was able to get my son into a childcare place that was safe versus where he was, that gave me strength to go, okay, I can go to school because my son's safe now when he wasn't safe before. So knowing my son is safe allows me to, and I don't want to brag, but I do have a 4.0, and I'm able to maintain that. They're working really, really hard, but it's because of people like Amber and Marnie that we're able to do that. And so advocates, I guess.
For me, it's of course all the support that we already mentioned here that we receive. I really receive a great amount of support from the CalWorks. Just I keep saying the same things: financial aid, family resource center, the work study program, and the Valley College in general is honestly, it's great. I love it, and I receive a lot of support from it. But more importantly is my ambitions to become a better version of myself, to become smarter, to speak English, to have a education. And another reason that keeps me up is to be a role model for my daughter. And one important thing is that my fear to not make it through. So my fear makes me just never give up, never look back. You know, there is a big fear of what would I do if I wasn't in college right now? What would I do? Where would I be? That I don't even want to think about it. And yes, and honestly, Family Resource Center where I used to work too, Marnie, she's very supportive. I remember every word of wisdom that she passed to the women working and attending as student parents. She one time said, even one class per semester is better than no class. And I always, every time I think to give up, or I think, oh my gosh, what if I don't pass 2 of my classes and I only pass 1 class, I just tell myself, it's still okay, it's still a progress. Yeah, thank you.
So rich and amazing. I don't have anything really more that could really be said. I think we're all sitting here crying, which is really odd on a webinar platform because I want to see like the rest of you too. But you know, I've said this before, and so my answer isn't too, but I was sitting doing homework with my now 7th grader. I have a middle schooler, which is crazy, you guys. And she said she was having a really difficult time with homework. And she said, seeing you do your homework and seeing you go through school and how hard you work makes me want to work harder. And sometimes I don't want to ask you for help because I know how hard you're already working. And I just thought like that, like all those nights that I was away, that I thought, am I really doing the right thing? Like they should need me, but like I'm off, I'm away. They're like, they didn't get very good years of me when I was in school. I was very, very stressed. That was worth it. And that is why I kept going, to be here, to work in this space, because I always thought in the back of my head, there are so many more women and fathers like me with additional barriers of being a foster youth or being a person of color that don't have the same privileges or opportunities that I have. And I would meet these other women at the Family Resource Center, and like we had nothing in common, yet everything in common. And it matters to feel that support. And so I'm just so happy for you and Shush, and for Lorena that I met you on my path too, and Christopher and everyone here. So thank you.
Yes, I I hope that not only, I hope that folks heard you all. Lorena, you should not humble brag. You're a boss. I mean, you all are. And what I hope those of us, the rest of us on this call or session take away from this is that these set of issues is not theoretical. We're talking about real humans who have little humans that they're also taking care of. And I hope that this supports our urgency around the issue. I don't think that as a whole, California is in a place yet where we consider this set of issues urgent enough. And so hopefully folks are taking some of that with them today. So just really, really appreciate you all sharing. Please do drop in other questions in the Q&A. Amber, I think this one is specifically for you. And it's from Connie Robison. And the question is, do you all use a case management approach to supporting student parents and their children? How might home visiting be helpful for student parents?
Oh yeah, that's a great question, and something we're actually kind of exploring right now. It's something we have a licensed marriage family therapist and a social worker on our staff, and we do case manage, not in the same way like CalWorks would case manage, but with privacy for data collection as well. And we case manage individual, kind of like coming from a like holistic family counseling support way, in addition to tracking data through the school system to look at success, graduation, transfer, etc. So those are integrated because it's important. Both of those things matter and the overall success of a student parent. Our licensed marriage and family therapist has a private practice in her own world, and she does do home visiting, and she works with a lot of our students. We've seen a trend in having children with special needs and really need that additional advocacy. So she will go to our local Los Angeles Unified School District with these students, and she will meet with the principal and the teachers to get an IED plan created for them. And so, but home visiting has not been something that we have done before, but it could be. I'm curious as to where your background is from, as to what you do, and how that could look for student parents is something to explore.
Example, one more, I think this is a follow-up question for you. How many student parents do you all support? From Anonymous.
From Anonymous. That's a good question. And pre-COVID, post-COVID are different answers, of course. But pre-COVID, we served about 500 student parents a semester. We know we have about 3,000 student parents on our campus. One of an interesting data points that we received recently, we're working with the Institute for Women's Policy Research and ECMC to look at our data and create kind of like fact sheets and toolkit to replicate kind of a model of what we do. Is of the 100% of those 500 students that we serve, we're only served, okay, let me take this back. Of all the student parents at Valley College, not ones from just that are from the Family Resource Center, but of every student parent, 22% of them are fathers. And when we look at the Family Resource Center, 500 students we're serving, only 2% are fathers. And so it's worthy of mentioning that the student fathers should be brought into this conversation in a more intentional way, something that we are looking to do ourselves.
Thank you all. I think we're gonna transition to Miguel in a second, but just want hope from each of you, any final suggestions or recommendations you want folks on this call to hear before we transition?
Oh, Lorena and Shush don't look like they're going to say anything, but you might have not have heard him. Lorena, I see your face changing. Just any last thoughts or anything you want
sorry about
the audience to know? Think about hiring student parents in your work. You know, they have a lot of experience to draw from. They have a lot of passion, you can see. Lorena and Marnie made it very clear when she started the Family Resource Center that the face of the Family Resource Center should be student parents themselves. So 50% of our staff is always previous student parents or is a current student parent. So whatever work you're in, make sure you bring student parents to the table.
Love that. Sush, Lorena, anything that you want to add? Sorry if you couldn't hear me. Just any final reflections or recommendations you want folks to hear from you before we transition?
Just in spite of the desire for change, I'm so thankful for what's there. And of course, it would be wonderful to have some streamlined approach and some revamping. However, it has been humbling, and I'm overwhelmingly grateful for what is present. And I hope it grows, and I hope more awareness goes. I'm so thankful for you guys making this a voice to be heard. But it is wonderful that there are people like you who care enough to bring up the subject. Thank you.
Sush, you want to bring us home?
Yeah. Allow me to join Lorena's words. It's really empowering, and it makes a big difference for me. I always tell to Family Resource Center representatives whenever they ask me, what is the most important thing about Family Resource Center for you? I say it's acknowledgement and it's support. And even the fact that, okay, I get more financial support from other programs, right, than Family Resource Center, but it still makes a big difference in my life. Because, for example, for Christmas last year, the only present that I received is myself and my daughter in this country. And the only present that I received, it was the gift cards from Family Resource Center. And small things like this make a big difference and just give me more strength to keep up and appreciate the support and the friendly approach. Thank you.
Well, I just want to appreciate each of you so much for your just honest and vulnerable reflections and contributions. I hope that you know there are so many of us on this call who are listening intently and really want to be good partners to you all as we try to think about how California and our institutions can do better by our student parents and their young ones. So just with lots of appreciation for you. And right before I pass it to Miguel, there's another question that I think is for me. And the question is sort of, what is my relationship, I think, to this issue? As I shared before, I'm a kid of a student parent who unfortunately was not successful. And, my mom's, pursuing higher ed. I'm still calling her a stop out. And so maybe one day she'll come back and continue to pursue what she started. And I hope that more folks do enter this space as good advocates. I don't know if we should always have student parents advocating for themselves. Like, why does that additional burden have to fall on them? And so we enter this space as an organization. I enter this space, hopefully respectfully, as an advocate in partnership with all of you. So appreciate all the really great questions, and again, for your time and contributions. I'm going to pass it now to Miguel Leon, who is a program officer at the Michelson 20mm Foundation, to close us out. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you to all of our panelists for the impactful and inspiring conversation. Truly grateful that you've shared your experiences and your stories with us today. As was mentioned, my name is Miguel Leon, Senior Program Manager with the Michelson 20mm Foundation. For far too long, pregnant and parenting students have been an afterthought in post-secondary education. But that ends with us, with this amazing community of practitioners, advocates, allies, philanthropists, and students. Today, I have the pleasure of sharing a bit of good news with you about how we plan to continue this conversation by uplifting parenting students. In 2022, the partners that brought you today's event are collaborating on an in-person summit that will reconvene this community for a day and a half of plenary sessions, breakouts, community building, and movement building focused on supporting pregnant and parenting students in California. We're targeting the second quarter of 2022, depending on COVID protocols, as the safety of participants is very important. In the meantime, there will be plenty of opportunities to continue to engage and keep today's momentum going. This coming year, the Michelson 20mm Foundation will launch a pregnant and parenting student project focused on developing and advancing a shared community-driven agenda to increase support for the student population at colleges and universities throughout California. Via the project, we will use our collective voice to lead public conversations that encourage higher education solutions and forge brighter, more prosperous futures for pregnant and parenting scholars. By centering students and experts with lived experience, our project will establish a forward-thinking, aspirational agenda for cross-sector stakeholders to engage research and evidence-based recommendations through a progressive educational lens informed by data and best practices in the field. Our project will engage all three systems of public post-secondary education, their chancellor's offices, as well as the Michelson Center for Public Policy and community-based organizations to support programmatic and policy ideas that help pregnant and parenting students persist and graduate. The initial phase of our project has already begun. We've convened a leadership committee that is helping us define what our collective work will look like next year and beyond. Building off of today's webinar, in the first quarter of 2022, we'll launch a multi-part virtual learning series that will uplift the most pressing issues facing pregnant and parenting students and the solutions emerging throughout the state to tackle the challenges that they face. If you'd like to learn more about the Michelson Pregnant and Parenting Student Project, please email me at miguel@20mm.org. We'll follow up today's conversation with more information on all of these burgeoning efforts, so keep an eye out for that in your inbox. On behalf of Ascend at the Aspen Institute, Tipping Point Community, the Education Trust West, California Competes, the Michelson 20mm Foundation, and the Blue Shield of California Foundation, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for all you do. We are grateful to be in community with you and look forward to the next time we gather to advance this very important work. Thanks again, and have a great rest of the day.